I accidentally discovered my son's secret at midnight, and it changed everything I thought I knew about love. I never meant to spy on my son. That's the truth I still tell myself. Even now, years later, the memory wakes me in the night like a door slowly creaking open in the dark. It was past midnight. The house was quiet in that deep, hollow way only parents understand, the kind of silence that feels earned. I had fallen asleep on the couch, the television still glowing, some late-night news talking about things that no longer mattered. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, careful, like someone trying not to be noticed. I opened my eyes and saw a faint light flicker under the hallway door. At first, I thought I imagined it. My son, Daniel, was 22, a grown man. He didn't have a curfew. He didn't know me explanations. So why did my chest tighten? I muted the TV and listened. The front door hadn't opened. No keys. No familiar sounds of him coming home from work or a night out. Instead, I heard a whisper. Not his, someone else's. I sat up slowly, my heart beating harder with every second. I wasn't afraid, at least I don't think I was. But something inside me knew this moment mattered. I stood and walked quietly toward the hallway. Daniel's bedroom door was slightly open. Warm light spilled across the dark floor. I stopped. I should have turned back. I should have respected his privacy. Every parent knows that invisible line, the one between caring and crossing it. But then I heard laughter. Soft, gentle. The kind of laughter that only happens when someone feels safe. And it wasn't my son's voice alone. I leaned forward just enough to see inside. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed. His shoulders relaxed in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. His hair was messy, like he had run his hands through it too many times. Standing in front of him was another young man, around his age, maybe a little taller, dark hair, nervous posture. They weren't doing anything inappropriate. No touching. Nothing that would raise concern to a stranger. But the look on my son's face, I had raised him alone after his mother passed. I knew every version of his smile, the polite one, the tired one, the fake one he used at family gatherings. This one was different. This smile was real, unprotected. The other boy said something I couldn't hear. Daniel laughed again, dropping his head, embarrassed, but happy. My breath caught. Something shifted inside me. Heavy, certain. I stepped back before they could see me. I returned to the living room and sat down, my hands trembling slightly. I stared at the blank television screen, my reflection looking back at me like a stranger. I told myself it was nothing. Friends visit late. Young people talk, laugh, share secrets. But deep down, I already knew. Daniel had always been a quiet child. Not shy, just thoughtful. He felt things deeply, even when he didn't say them out loud. After his mother died, he became my shadow. We learned how to survive together, just the two of us. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to shave, how to stand up for himself. But there were things he never brought to me, and maybe that was my fault. I grew up in a world where men didn't talk about feelings, where love was shown through work, silence, and sacrifice. I thought I had done better. That night, I lay awake, listening to the muffled voices from his room. Sometimes laughter, sometimes long pauses filled with meaning I couldn't hear, but somehow still felt. When the front door finally opened an hour later, I didn't move. I listened as footsteps faded into the night. Daniel stood in the hallway for a long moment. I could tell by the silence. Then he quietly closed his door. The next morning, he came into the kitchen like nothing had happened. "Morning, Dad," he said, pouring himself coffee. I studied him over the rim of my mug. He looked tired but lighter, like someone who had been carrying something heavy and finally set it down, even if only for a moment. "Sleep okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. Too quickly. We sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. I wanted to ask everything. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me? But fear held me back. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of losing him. Fear of confirming what my heart already knew. "Dad," he said suddenly. I looked up. He hesitated, fingers tightening around his cup. "Never mind." He left for work 10 minutes later. I stayed at the table long after my coffee went cold. That night wasn't just about what I saw. It was about what I realized. My son had a life I wasn't part of, and whatever he was hiding, it mattered enough for him to keep it secret. The real question wasn't whether I was ready to know the truth. It was whether I was strong enough to love him through it. The days that followed felt strange. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different. Daniel still came home after work, still left his shoes by the door, still asked if I needed anything from the store. On the surface, everything was the same, but underneath, there was tension. Like a crack in glass you only notice when the light hits it just right. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way he guarded his phone now, always angled away. The way he smiled at messages but never explained why. The way he paused before leaving the house like he wanted to say something, but didn't, and I did the same. I wanted to ask. Instead, I watched. I told myself I was giving him space, that this is what good parents do when their children grow up. But the truth was, I was afraid. Afraid that if I said the wrong thing, something would break. One evening, Daniel came home later than usual. The clock was close to 11 when I heard the door. "You're still up?" he asked, surprised. "Couldn't sleep," I said. He nodded and hung up his jacket, but that pause was there again, like something he wanted to say but held back. I didn't let it happen. "Are you seeing someone?" I asked. The question felt heavier than I meant it to. Daniel paused for a moment. "No," he said quickly, too quickly. "Nothing serious." I nodded, acting like I believed him. "That's good. You've always been serious about things." He looked at me, searching my face, maybe for approval, maybe for judgment. "Yeah," he said quietly. We stood just a few feet apart, but it felt like there was a lifetime between us. That night I dreamed of his mother. She stood in our old kitchen, sunlight filling the room, looking younger, peaceful. "You have to let him be who he is," she said. "I am," I replied. She shook her head. "You're letting him live, but not letting him be seen." I woke up with my heart racing. Days passed, then weeks. One evening, a name came up. "Marcus," Daniel said casually at dinner. "We're working late tomorrow." I kept my eyes on my plate. "A coworker?" He hesitated. "Yeah." I nodded, but the way he said it felt rehearsed, like there was more he wasn't saying. That night I heard it again. Footsteps, a soft knock, then quiet laughter. This time, I stayed where I was, sitting in the dark, staring at the hallway, feeling like a stranger in my own home. After that, the distance between us grew. Daniel stayed out more, and when he was home, he kept to himself. Our conversations became shorter, safer, and I began to wonder, did my silence feel like rejection to him? That thought hurt the most. One afternoon, while cleaning the garage, I found an old photo album. Daniel as a child, smiling wide, arms wrapped around me. His mother lifting him up, both of them laughing without a care. And in that moment, something hit me. I had taught my son how to be strong, but I had never taught him how to be open with me. The breaking point came on a Sunday. We were both home, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Daniel stood by the door, keys in his hand. "Out again?" I asked. He stopped. "Yeah." Then he hesitated. "Dad, I'm not just going out. This time I really looked at him. His shoulders were tense. His eyes guarded. Okay, I said slowly. Then tell me. He swallowed. I can't, he said. Not yet. Something in his voice cracked. Quiet, but enough. My chest tightened. Daniel, I said, standing. You don't have to hide from me. He let out a soft, bitter laugh. You don't know that. The words hit harder than he probably meant them to. I've never given you a reason to think that, I said. He looked straight into my eyes. Really looked. You've never given me a reason to think you wouldn't, he replied. Silence settled between us. And in that silence, I finally saw it. The fear, the exhaustion, the weight of carrying a truth alone. Be home safe, I said quietly. He nodded and left. I sat back down, my hands shaking. That night, he didn't come home. Midnight passed. Then 1. I told myself he was fine. He was an adult, probably with friends. But the worry crept in anyway, slow, steady, impossible to ignore. At 2:30, I heard the door. Daniel stepped inside, his eyes red, his face pale and worn. Are you okay? I asked immediately. He hesitated, then shook his head. No. Something inside me cracked open. Sit, I said, pulling out a chair. He sat. We looked at each other, both afraid to speak. I'm tired of hiding, he whispered. My heart started pounding. From who? I asked gently. He took a breath. From you. Before I could stop myself, I reached across the table. Daniel, I said, my voice heavy. Whatever it is, I'm not ready to say it yet, he interrupted. But I need you to know, I'm still your son. I held his gaze. You always will be, I said without hesitation. His eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. That night, he went to his room without another word. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel like distance. Felt like something was beginning. The house felt different after that. Not quieter, just heavier. Like even the walls were listening. For 2 days, Daniel avoided my eyes. He left early, came back late. When we crossed paths, we spoke only about small things, who was cooking, who needed the car, whether the trash had been taken out. But underneath every word was the same unspoken truth. Something was coming. I didn't push him. For the first time, I understood that silence wasn't distance. It was preparation. On the 3rd evening, Daniel came home before sunset. I knew something had changed the moment I heard the door close. Not rushed, not careful, just final. He stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, looking around like he was seeing the place for the last time. Dad, he said. I turned off the television. Yeah. Can we talk? My heart was already racing. Of course. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with homework, where he once told me he got into college, where we mourned his mother together. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit from childhood. I don't know how to say this, he began. You don't have to say it perfectly, I said. Just honestly. He let out a shaky breath. I've been lying, he said. Not about who I am, but about who you think I am. I stayed quiet. I didn't plan for you to find out like this, he continued. I didn't even plan to tell you yet. But carrying it alone is exhausting. My throat tightened. Daniel, I said carefully, you don't have to protect me. He looked up, eyes shining. That's the problem, he said. I've been doing that my whole life. Those words hurt more than any accusation. He stood and began pacing. I kept waiting for the right moment, he said. A sign. Something that would tell me you'd be okay. I watched him. My son, no longer a child, but still so young in moments like this. And what stopped you? I asked. He stopped walking. Fear, he said simply. I nodded. Mine too. He looked surprised. You're afraid? Yes, I admitted. Not of who you are, but of failing you. That made him pause. He took a breath, and then said the words I had expected, but still wasn't ready to hear. Dad, I'm in love. The room seemed to freeze. With someone you've met, he added quietly. My mind flashed back. Dark hair, soft laughter, footsteps in the night. Marcus, I said. Daniel closed his eyes. Yes. He waited for anger, for disappointment, for rejection. I gave him none of those. Instead, I asked, how long? He opened his eyes, surprised. Almost a year, he said. We met at work. It started as friendship, then became something I couldn't ignore. I nodded slowly. And you're happy? I asked. His answer came without hesitation. Yes. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to lose you, he said, his voice shaking. After Mom died, you were all I had, and I know the world you grew up in. I know what you were taught. I swallowed. You're right, I said. I was taught a lot of things that were wrong. He studied my face, like he wasn't sure he could trust what he was seeing. I don't need you to understand everything, he said. I just need you to see me. I stood and walked around the table. I placed my hand on his shoulder. I see you. That was all it took. He broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet collapse into my chest, like he used to when he was small. And I held him. For the first time in years, I held my son without trying to be strong. When he finally pulled back, he wiped his eyes, embarrassed. Sorry, he muttered. Don't be, I said. I should have made this easier for you. He looked confused. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. I waited for you to come to me, I replied. When I should have been brave enough to tell you I was ready to listen. That stayed with him. I could see it later that night. Daniel went to his room lighter than I had seen him in months. I stayed at the table, staring at the empty chair he had just left. I thought about the boy I saw that first night, the way my son looked at him with trust, with care. I thought about Marcus, about the courage it must have taken to walk into someone else's home, not knowing if you'd be accepted. And I realized something else. This wasn't just Daniel's truth. It was mine too. The next morning, Daniel paused at the door before leaving for work. Dad, he said. Yeah. Marcus wants to meet you, he said quietly. Only if you want to. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't afraid of Marcus. I was afraid of what meeting him might show me about myself. But then I nodded. I'd like that. Daniel smiled. And for the first time since his mother died, it felt like our family was growing, not breaking. Meeting Marcus changed everything. And not in the way I expected. He came over on a quiet Saturday afternoon, dressed simply, his hands clasped together like he was preparing for something difficult. When I opened the door, he stood a little straighter than necessary, offering a polite smile that didn't quite hide his nerves. Sir, he said, thank you for letting me come. That one sentence told me more about him than hours of conversation could have. You can call me Tom, I said. Come. Daniel stood just behind him, tense, ready to step in if anything went wrong. But nothing did, at least not at first. We sat in the living room, untouched coffee resting on the table between us. Marcus answered every question carefully. Where he grew up, what he did for work, what he enjoyed in his free time. But what mattered wasn't what he said. It was how he looked at my son. Not in obvious ways, just in quiet moments. Watching Daniel's face, adjusting his voice when he seemed tired, listening like every word mattered. I knew that kind of love. It was how I had once loved his mother. After a while, I surprised even myself. You can stay for dinner, if you want. Marcus looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at me, shocked. I'd like that, Marcus said. Dinner wasn't smooth, but it was real. No pretending. Just three people trying to find their place together. When Marcus left, Daniel walked him out. Their voices were low, private. Something I didn't need to hear to understand. When the door closed, Daniel leaned back and exhaled. You were kind, he said. I was honest, I answered. He smiled, but not fully. And I realized the real test wasn't inside our home. It was outside. A week later, Daniel came home upset. They know, he said. Who? People at work. Someone saw us. Now it's spreading. My chest tightened. And they cut my shifts. Said it's temporary. I knew better. It never is. That's not right, I said. I know, he snapped, then softened. Sorry. I'm just tired of proving I deserve space. That stayed with me. After that, things changed fast. A neighbor stopped greeting us. Someone made a quiet remark at the store. Daniel ignored it. Couldn't. That night, I said, you don't have to live like this. You could leave, start fresh. He looked straight at me. Is that what you want? No, I said quickly. I just don't want you hurt. I'm already hurt, he replied. I just need to know I'm not alone. Those words hit harder than anything else. And I realized this was the moment. Not the night I saw him. Not the day he told me. The real breaking point came when Daniel didn't come home again. But this time there was a message. I'm with Marcus. I need some space. I'll be back. Space. That word echoed louder than any argument. He returned 2 days later, distant. I can't do this halfway, he said. I can't be brave out there and careful in here. My chest tightened. Are you saying you're leaving? I asked. I'm saying I don't know, he replied. And that scares me. I wanted to tell him to stay. I wanted to beg. Instead, I did something harder. I love you, I said. Enough to let you choose. He nodded, tears in his eyes. That night, I sat alone in the living room, thinking about all the ways I had failed him without meaning to. I thought about Marcus, about the courage it takes to love someone, knowing the world may not be kind. And I understood something clearly. If I stayed silent now, I would lose my son. Not to distance, but to doubt. The next morning, I made a decision. One that scared me more than anything before. The morning light felt different. Not brighter. Not warmer. Just honest. I sat at the kitchen table long after sunrise, listening to the quiet hum of the house. The same house that had held grief, growth, and now a choice. I thought about Daniel as a child, running through these halls without fear. I thought about the man he had become, learning to stand in a world that didn't always make space for him. And then it hit me. Love isn't proven by silence. It's proven by presence. I drove to Marcus's place without calling. The address Daniel had given me weeks earlier sat folded in my wallet, untouched until now. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, not because I was unsure, but because I was finally ready. Marcus opened the door. He looked surprised. Sir Tom, he corrected himself quickly. I won't stay long, I said. I just need to talk. Daniel appeared behind him, eyes wide. Dad, I came to say something I should have said sooner, I told them. They both listened. I may not understand everything, I continued, but I understand love, and I understand courage, and I see both in you. Daniel's breath caught. You don't have to choose between who you are and where you come from, I said. This house, your home, has room for all of you. Marcus looked away, overwhelmed. Daniel stepped forward and hugged me tightly, like he was afraid I might disappear. "I never wanted to leave," he whispered. "I know," I said. "And I never wanted you to feel like you had to." Things didn't change overnight. The world didn't suddenly become kinder. But our home became something stronger than fear. Marcus started coming over more often, not as a guest, but as someone who belonged. Some neighbors judged. Others surprised me. And one day, when another quiet comment was made in public, I did something I had never done before. I spoke up. Not loudly, not angrily, but clearly. "That's my son," I said. "And I'm proud of him." Daniel heard about it later. He cried. So did I. Months passed. Daniel found a new job, one that treated him better. Marcus stood beside him through everything, steady and patient. And I learned how to listen, how to ask, how to grow. One evening, we sat on the porch, watching the sky fade into night. Daniel spoke softly. "I used to think love meant hiding parts of yourself." I shook my head. "No," I said. "Love means finally being able to rest." He smiled at Marcus. And for the first time since his mother passed, I felt something settle inside me. Peace. That midnight secret I once feared. It became a doorway, not into loss, but into truth. And in choosing love over fear, I didn't lose my son. I found him.